So hey anime fans, the series name is What If Naruto Got Harem with Hellsing Vampire, so let's start the series. I don't wish to hear your excuses, said a man concealed by shadows in a pitch-black room with only a desk and another man with a white mask over his face and a black robe. My lord, he has been subjected to some of our best techniques, but his mind refuses to break. All seals that are placed on him burn up in seconds, so we cannot even erase his mind, the man in the mask said without saying anything for a moment. What about the Yamanaka that was due to mean him again? The man in the shadows inquired, bending forward without saying anything. The other person's assumptions were confirmed when the man with the mask remained silent for a few while. The man in the shadows then leaned forward to show his scarred and bandaged face. It appears that we should test the C-93 once more, said the now exposed Danzo Shimura. The man in the mask, who was now identified as a member of Root, gasped aloud at this unexpected development and attempted to persuade his master to take this step. Sir, is it wise to pursue this course of action? The C-93 has either completely destroyed the bodies of the subject or driven them completely mad, replied the Root ninja. What successes have we received from the C-93? Danzo inquired, approaching a cabinet, taking out a red folder, and beginning to examine its contents. Are you questioning me? He questioned. Increased strength, speed, sight, and regeneration. However, all subjects have gone mad almost instantly after displaying these abilities, replied the Root ninja. As he read on, Danzo questioned, how much of an improvement are we talking about? Children display the strength and speed of Chunin level ninja, their eyesight allows them to see completely in the dark and they can heal near instantly, replied the ninja. As he closed the folder and left the room, Danzo gave the order, all tests have come back negative, but this time it is different, we are not dealing with a child who is broken nor a normal ninja with normal chakra. If the test is a failure, then we will proceed on to plan B immediately. Go retrieve the C-93 and meet me at its room. Damn that Sarutobi, it's time for that brat to realize that no one will find him here. Now I have to risk everything just to have him obey me, Danzo thought as he made his way through the dimly lit hallways. If he had just given him to me earlier, I would have already had my weapon. He saw seals written on a big steel door that prevented chakra from leaving the chamber, making it impossible for anybody outside to know who or what was within. He opened the door and saw 3 men standing there, 2 of them gazing into a glass mirror while the third was writing something on a notepad while he looked at the entrance. All 3 men turned to face Danzo as soon as he walked in. The man holding the note said, Lord Danzo, I didn't know you would be attending the session tonight. All 3 guys gasped when Danzo said, there has been a change in plans for tonight, our experiments have been deemed a failure, so we are going to resort to the C-93. One of the guys protested, but sir, all tests have been a failure. If you use that now he will surely die and we are so close to succeeding, but Danzo stopped him with a scowl. Danzo spoke as he approached the mirror to peer into a dark chamber. This boy was stronger than I believed. No, if he hasn't broken after 6 months of our most powerful techniques, then he will not break. I haven't even met a shinobi who was able to do this well, he said. A child no older than C was found chained to the wall inside, his body covered in dried blood that had accumulated over the previous few months, his head stooped low, and his blonde hair coated in dry blood. No matter how much harm was done to his little body, his tenant would not let him die. Each time they cut him, they would heal him, each time they beat him, they would heal him, and each time they burned him, they would heal him. Danzo was initially certain that the youngster would break in a short while, and he would scream like everyone else, but he persisted and resisted even though it was harsher. However, after the first month, he stopped reacting to the methods Danzo and his root used on him. During the first month, he would beg them to stop and cry, but now all they would receive in return was a look of complete hatred. The youngster would simply take everything they did and gaze back at them, not even flinching when they burned the flesh off his very bones or repeatedly slashed him open. At least until the start of the 5th month of his confinement. One day, it was unexpected to enter his cell and see the happy smile of a blonde who had endured 5 months of agony. The blonde's smile had changed from one of happiness to one of insanity. The glimmer of optimism and defiance had vanished from his eyes, and in its place was a clever craziness that had already claimed the life of one of his ninja while they were by the blonde's side. The blonde had escaped from the chains and killed the ninja who was torturing him. His body had been torn to pieces, and the blonde was covered in blood, but no one knew how it had happened. The fact that blonde was eating the remnants of his ninja while grinning the entire time, however, was what bothered Danzo more than the blood. When he and his ninja entered the room, the blonde glanced up and spoke the first words he had spoken in 4 months. "Best meal I've had in months, Lord Danzo." Ha 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 ha. The phrase alone sent a chill down his spine since it was spoken in a childlike voice, but it was so malicious that it didn't seem to belong in a youngster like that. Then came the laugh, which was so high-pitched and full of craziness that it made almost all of his ninja freeze in fear. When his ninja placed more on his body to make sure he wouldn't escape again, the child unexpectedly just turned back to his chains and put them back on without even protesting. From that moment on, the blonde would actively communicate with his physicians, torturers, and Danzo. He always spoke politely, even when he was being stabbed, burned, or cut, and occasionally he would even give his own ninja advice on how to harm him. During his torture sessions, he was either laughing, giggling, or even dozing off if he wasn't speaking. Danzo had never encountered someone who could withstand such a punishment without dying. At this point, however, he was going to risk months of labor to obtain his ideal weapon by injecting an artificial blood made from the blood of a long-dead creature. The blood was designed to make the recipient who received it totally devoted to Danzo. Although this boy's defiance impressed him, Danzo didn't want a weapon that could turn on him at any time. If this test failed, he would revert to Plan B and lock the Kyuubi into another youngster. 2 ninja came into the room and exclaimed, "Lord Danzo, we have the C-93 here for you." With one of the doctors behind him and the 2 ninja on his flank, Danzo said, "Good, let's proceed," opening the cell door. The youngster, who was later identified as Naruto Uzumaki, the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki, raised his head and grinned at the 4 individuals in front of him as soon as they entered. "Lord Danzo, what do I owe the honor of having you come to my humble home?" the blonde inquired. "Make sure you inject it directly into the heart," Danzo ordered, ignoring the boy as he handed the doctor the C-93 syringe. Naruto laughed once again before getting a backhand to the face from one of Danzo's ninja. "What about you two? Are you going to answer me or is the mummy bitch going to ignore me like usual?" he said. Before the other ninja struck Naruto in the stomach, he chuckled and said, "Ha ha ha, keep it up. I think you may have even cracked a tooth that time." The other ninja yelled, "Quiet demon. Show respect to Lord Danzo," before Naruto looked up, grinned, and then burst out laughing. As 2 ninja seized Naruto by the sides, Danzo said, "Restrain him now." Naruto giggled as the ninja restrained him, preventing him from moving. "Oh please ninja, don't hurt me. I'm just a little boy." "Ahaha." The doctor said, "This will only take a moment, boy," as he went up to Naruto. With a smile on his face, Naruto said, I hope you know I will enjoy feasting on all of you when I escape. Danzo nodded to the doctor and said, I wouldn't be too sure about that boy. With a smirk on his face, Naruto Uzumaki gazed at the doctor as the doctor swiftly inserted the syringe into his heart. Was that supposed to hurt little ol' me? He inquired. One of the physicians, who had been there every day for the previous 6 months that Naruto had been in the cell, said uneasily, Sir. Most patients usually scream by now. Additionally, he was responsible for comprehending Naruto's mind, and what he saw deeply troubled him. Naruto's mind had broken only a month prior, but in this unique instance, the youngster was able to concentrate his madness at particular focal spots. The boy's principles and ideals were still ingrained in him, albeit subconsciously. On the outside, however, was a malicious and insane entity that appeared just when it was needed. If he had to give the youngster anything, it would be that his will was considerably stronger than any other guy he had ever encountered, which was maybe the only reason the boy was still out of their hands. However, when they brought in a murderer or rapist, the youngster wouldn't hold back at all. He would play with the victim before going in for the kill, sometimes even eating them alive. They had attempted to convince him to kill innocent people, but he would just sit there grinning at whatever was brought in. To put it mildly, it was gory, and the doctor never understood the blonde's newfound passion for cannibalism, but that wasn't the reason he was given the task of studying the child in order to keep him from becoming too involved. Danzo glanced at the doctor and then at Naruto's beaming face. Give it a second, the man said, as Naruto's grin grew crazily. Naruto said, I'm going to enjoy eating that illusion eye of yours, as Danzo's visible eye thinned. You see, the Uchiha massacre happened just 3 months ago, and Danzo was able to take Shisui Uchiha's one eye. He even tried his strongest technique on the youngster, but the brat laughed in his face and called him a mummy-faced bitch. The blonde finally developed an immunity to every genjutsu he could use after he spent several months in the room honing his skills on her. Naturally, he caused the youngster some long-term harm because he now detested anyone who had the Sharingan eye. Naruto would frequently discuss eating it as a form of retaliation. When he saw a shift in Naruto's eyes, he grinned a little and said, What are you smiling at? As Naruto's body began to thrash frantically as the C-93 began to enter his system. I suppose it hurts, said one of the root ninjas, because he hasn't even replied to anything we've done so far. With blood streaming from his lips, nose, eyes, and ears, Naruto yelled, I'll kill you all. I will feast on your remains, cut off your heads, and mount them for the world to see. Chain him to the wall as tightly as possible and stick as many seals on his body as you can. The Kyuubi will be too busy to work with any seal placed on him. Keep guard then and summon me when he has woke, Danzo ordered as he left the room after Naruto screamed for more than 30 minutes before he finally stopped and collapsed in exhaustion. Naruto grinned as he approached the cage containing Kyuubi and said, Well, hello Kurama. It is nice to see you again on this fine May evening. Kurama looked down at Naruto's threatening smile and said, What is happening to your body? Whatever they put into your body is even overriding my chakra and will not be long before it has completely infected you. Naruto crossed his arms and pouted, It looks like they've managed to kill me after all. That's terrible. I didn't even get to eat that delicious-looking eye of his. Kid, sometimes you even scare me, the Kyuubi said, causing Naruto to smile once more. Really? I scare even the greatest of all beings. Oh, now I really wish I didn't die down here. It would have been so fun to kill all of those out there that deserve death, laughed Naruto. That sounds like quite an interesting plan, a voice that reverberated throughout the room said. Although it was quiet, the voice had an undercurrent of strength that even the Kyuubi could not match. The Kyuubi yelled, "Who is there? Get out of my body," but Naruto merely grinned. The voice repeated, but in a sarcastic tone, "Your body. It seems that this is actually just the body of the little boy there." As his smile grew even more maniacal, Naruto said in understanding, "Well, hello Mr. Second Voice in me head. Are you going to help me have fun like Mr. Kyuubi promised me he would? Oh. Maybe you are what Mr. Mummy put into me. I guess you could say that. You do seem to be to my liking, also your body seems to be able to handle foreign souls quite well. My guess due to the large FO before me, the others died or were driven mad, well madder than you currently are at least," said the voice as Naruto glanced about. Naruto smiled and said, "So what is your name then? I would at least like to know the name of my net tenant before you can move in." As a mass of black shadows materialized in front of Naruto and took the appearance of a big man, the voice said, "I am known by many names throughout history, child. I was the No-Life King, the Gnome King, Nozafuredu, but my last name was simply Alucard." Both Naruto and Kyuubi found the man's red hat and jacket quite odd. He had long black hair and red-tinted glasses hiding his eyes. His jacket had white laces at certain places. The man's smile, however, was what caught my attention the most because it was exactly the same look that Naruto was returning to him, but Naruto lacked the size and fangs that would have made Alucard's grin appear even more fierce. The Kurama exclaimed in disbelief, "You lie. The No-Life King disappeared thousands of years ago." Naruto's smile appeared to widen slightly with this revelation. As Alucard approached Naruto, Naruto said, "It appears that my big brother is aware of you, Mr. Alucard. Tell me, are you here to fight or kill me? Either one sounds good to me." Alucard said, "Now why would I want to kill the last of my descendants?" which made Naruto's eyes enlarge and his smile waver. Kurama, on the other hand, was stunned by the knowledge. As Alucard turned to face the beast, Kurama questioned, "If that is true, then why does he not share any of your fabled powers? It isn't a gene that can be passed down through generations. He has my blood, but still has his soul. For now, the only reason I'm here now is because of the one man injecting particles of my essence into your bloodstream. Now he will have every single one of my powers," said Alucard as his body radiated with killing intent. Naruto grinned as his eyes grew crimson, but he lacked the slit to indicate that Kurama was responsible. "So Mr. Mummy injected you into me, which will allow me to be granted deadly powers. I'm going to have to thank him when I wake up," he said. Alucard grinned broadly and said, "I feel like I'm going to love living in your body for the time being." Naruto grinned back. Curiosity prompted Naruto to question, "So what exactly am I now?" As Naruto's smile turned savage once more, Alucard exclaimed, "You will be a monster in every way. Vampires are what we are known as. We live off the blood of our enemies and feast upon their souls." Naruto said, "I guess that explains why that man tasted so good," as his world momentarily glowed. Alucard grinned at the boy as Naruto said, "I guess I get to try out my new abilities already." Alucard commanded, "They will have no chance. Feast upon them," as Naruto vanished. Alucard turned his icy look on Kyuubi, who shuddered at the sight, and said, "Now you Kurama, we are going to talk about my descendant's future." One of the doctors approached the child and said, "It looks like the brat is waking up. Ninja, please make sure he is safe while I examine him." As he took Naruto by the neck and raised him off the ground, the ninja said, "Stay still demon or I will kill you." Naruto murmured, "I'm not a demon." Loud enough for the ninja to hear. The ninja mockingly said, "Then what are you?" before Naruto took hold of the ninja's elbow and squeezed. Normally, this wouldn't have affected the ninja, but when you consider that Naruto inherited Alucard's abilities, it makes him a very powerful motherfucker. Therefore, it is not shocking to us when the ninja's elbow breaks instantly, prompting the ninja to scream in agony. After forcing the man to his knees, Naruto used his other, now somewhat clawed hand to hold his neck and gazed into the ninja's eyes. "I'm not a demon. I am a monster," exclaimed Naruto, tearing the ninja's neck off with his blood-red eyes. Naruto turned to face the two physicians in the room and grinned at their terrified expressions. It was an absolute joy to watch these guys flee from him in terror, and it gave him even more comfort to know that they were due for their previous transgressions. As soon as could, one of the physicians rushed to unlock the door, but Naruto vanished from view and reappeared to block it. Naruto let out all of his inner murderous intent and exclaimed, "Where are you going? The fun has only just begun." Danzo was signing some paperwork in his office when he suddenly felt a strong desire to murder that seems to have at least matched the Kyuubi's. Danzo hurried to a communication switch and turned it on. Danzo said, "All route get to the labs. The Kyuubi has been released. I want it back under my control this instant." Unfortunately for him, he was unaware that it was something far worse than the Kyuubi. 6 months had passed since the Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, had suffered one of the most severe injuries of his life. His grandson, Naruto Uzumaki, was all blood and gone one night after being taken to the hospital for yet another beating at the hands of Konoha's citizens. Since the power of a Jinchuriki was something that most villages greatly desired, he sincerely hoped that Naruto had been able to escape the city and live out the rest of his life in peace, but he knew that wasn't the case. It wouldn't be difficult to surmise that someone had kidnapped Naruto for their own reasons. They would never know what or who they had lost, and he was never going to tell them. Naruto wasn't the demon, he was the son of their late Hokage, but that didn't even matter anymore, Sarutobi muttered as he looked around his town. "That boy could have one day been the Hokage," said Sarutobi regretfully. At that moment, he sensed it. The community had not had a powerful, oppressive chakra in 6 years. What was frightening was that it seemed to be only beyond the wall, outside the city limits. The elderly Hokage ordered, "ANBU get all Jounin level ninja in full battle gear. We have to hurry now." However, the entire village was already in a panic and almost all of the shinobi were moving in the direction of the tower, so his orders were unnecessary. The Chunin had already departed to guard the walls, so this was all that was left to scout out the situation. Hiruzen removed his cloak and put on his armor as he left the tower to be met by 30 Jounin of the Leaf. As he headed toward the chakra, the Hokage exclaimed, "We must hurry to where the chakra was released. If the Kyuubi has escaped, then we already have seen it by now. There is still hope to advertise a catastrophe." As he hurried behind the Hokage, a dog-faced Anbu questioned, "Sir, what will we do if the Kyuubi hasn't been released?" Hiruzen said, "If it hasn't, then there is still hope to save Naruto," as they headed toward the location where the chakra was most noticeable. As a mole-faced Anbu performed a few seals and slammed his hand on the ground, the Hokage exclaimed, "Mole! Use a sensing jutsu and see how large the caves are beneath us." The Hokage nodded, and they all moved toward the entrance. "Lord Hokage. The tunnel system is massive and seems to be miles long. There is an entrance 100 yards to the north, sir," the Anbu said. The Hokage said, "Open it for us, Mole," as Mole used jutsu to create a wide opening in the tunnel. Every ANBU was almost brought to their knees by the explosion of killing intent that blasted them as soon as the tunnel opened. Since it was completely dark and no sound could escape, they were unable to see far inside. One of the ANBU members inquired, "How should we proceed, Lord Hokage?" "Dog, take a team into the tunnels and scout them out. If you run into Naruto, you are to not engage unless attacked first," the Hokage ordered as Dog nodded and brought 3 additional ninjas, Cat, Tenzo, and Mole, with him. Following Mole's instructions, they made their way through the tunnels for a few minutes before arriving at the first of several spacious chambers. There, they were confronted by a horrifying scene. The experienced ANBU was perplexed by the fact that there was no blood in the room at all, despite the fact that 8 or more ninja, root from the appearance of things, were there, their heads severed and their bodies ripped apart. But if the way these guys died is any indication, there ought to be blood puddles in the room. 2 of the heads were impaled on 2 long spears and were simply hanging there. As the others bowed and removed their kunai, Dog ordered, "Everyone stay on guard. It is likely that whatever did this to these men is still in these tunnels." Cat questioned, "What could have done something like this?" Mole suggested, "Kyubi maybe." But that wouldn't explain what happened to all the blood, as they continued to explore the base. As they did so, they found more dead. All of them had been brutally murdered. One of them appeared to have been eaten based on the scars on his bones. The scream "hitch" came from down a short hallway, instantly making everyone in the ANBU tense. When the 4th arrived at the room where the scream had come from, they could hear someone fighting as though they were being strangled. When they unlocked the door, they heard a sickening squeaking sound. They discovered a boy's short silhouette bent over a big body inside. The boy appeared unaware of the shinobi entering the room and carried on with his previous activities. The youngster reached up and removed one eyeball from the man's head before beginning to chuckle, much to the ANBU's surprise. They were disgusted to see that the boy was eating away at the man's neck and appeared to be sucking blood into his mouth. With a chuckle, the boy threw the eye into his mouth and immediately bit down on it, saying, "I told you I would eat this evil eye of yours, mummy." As the young boy stopped eating the man's remains and turned to face the 4 shinobi, Mole said, "What the fuck?" When he turned around, the room was too dark for any of the 4 ANBU to see any of the boy's features. They didn't know exactly who he was until he chose to speak. As he vanished from view, the child said, "Dog San. You came to rescue me from my friends," before resurfacing on Dog's chest and sending the 2 of them hurtling through the door. Mole and Cat rushed to Dog's side right away and were shocked to see that the boy was none other than Naruto Uzumaki. However, their happiness was short-lived as soon as they saw Naruto's eyes, which appeared to be incredibly strange as they alternated between being eyes of innocence, madness, anger, and malice. All 3 seemed to be fused into one. These were the eyes of a shinobi who had lost it after a mission and was unable to continue. Because they were unable to comprehend reality, these shinobi frequently killed themselves or others as a result. Naruto began to chuckle at his ordeal and exclaimed, "They did a lot of bad things to me, dog. They beat me, stabbed me, poisoned me, burned me, experimented on me, and tried to kill me. They tried to force me to kill children, but I refused, however I killed the bad ones. Yep. They deserved to die for what they did. Their souls were dark, so dark. Just like all of the people who were in the base. So I killed them and took their souls so they would suffer for an eternity." Naruto shouted in delight at having taken so numerous lives. Dog said in surprise, "Naruto, you did all this?" With a terrible smirk on his face, Naruto exclaimed. Yeah, it was fun too. The more they screamed, the better it was. But Dog, still in astonishment, questioned, why did you kill them though? Naruto simply said, "'Cause I'm a monster," as his persona completely changed. The excitement vanished, to be replaced with a serene expression of sick interest. Naruto grinned and said, "I killed them because I enjoyed it, nothing more, nothing less." Then his eyes returned to their sky blue color. "No, your souls aren't dark, only those that deserve to die, will die," said Naruto, but Dog and the other ANBU could still hear him. "I can show you how if you would like," he asked. Mole's voice called out from the room they had just entered, "Dog. This is Lord Danzo." "What?" exclaimed Dog as he and the other ANBU dashed into the room, followed by a beaming Naruto. The body Naruto had just been eating was, in fact, that of Danzo Shimura, one of the Hokage's advisors and his only friend and comrade. Although one eye was removed, the one that remained on the body exuded such pure terror that it made the ANBU shudder. While we approached the ANBU, Naruto grinned and said, "He begged like a dog as I slaughtered his men, but I couldn't let him live. His soul was the darkest of them all, my life was not the first he has tried to ruin, thousands have died due to his actions." As Dog appeared to be considering something, Cat said, "Dog, what are we supposed to do?" "He killed Lord Danzo in cold blood. It seems that Danzo has been hiding quite a few things from the rest of his village. If this is indeed his root base, then he was guilty of treason and Naruto was nothing more than his executioner, so we do nothing," Dog said while the other three appeared uneasy. "Naruto, if we take you back to the village, will you attack any of the civilians?" replied Dog. "Only if they attack me first, that is my promise to you, Dog," Naruto said, yet grinning. Dog asked, "Will you keep your word?" "Dog, you cannot be serious. If he is as unstable as I believe, then he could be nothing more than a ticking time bomb," Mole exclaimed. Naruto grinned and said, "I never break my promises. That's how I live." As Naruto nodded and his smile vanished, stated Dog said, "We will take him back." That's the end of this discussion. Let's go. Remember Naruto, you cannot attack the civilians if they do nothing. No matter how dark their souls are. Naruto went to the door and left the room, the ANBU trailing him from behind. "Fine, you are no fun, Dog," he said. Dog inquired, "How many men were there in the base?" 43 personnel and doctors, 35 ninja, every single one of them had a black soul. There are prisoners here too, they are on the level below us, stated Naruto. So he is only murdering people who are deserving of death. Thought Dog and Cat took the lead and led them out of the cave, saying, even though he has bipolar disorder, he still has a sense of right and wrong. Dog questioned, "How did you kill them though?" Naruto said, "I'm a monster, remember," as a wave of murderous desire struck them, making them stagger a little. It's unbelievable how much murderous intent he may possess at his age, all four ANBUs simultaneously thought. Dog rushed to the Hokage, eclipsing Naruto and the three other ANBU. Outside, he was suddenly attacked by three ninja who were brandishing blades at his throat. The Hokage hurriedly said, "Dog. What did you find down there? Did the Kyuubi escape and is it Naruto?" As Hiruzen's mouth opened like a fish, Dog replied, "Hokage-sama. The killing intent that we felt was not from the Kyuubi. There are no traces of demonic chakra at all. What we felt was nothing more than killing intent from one person, Naruto Uzumaki." A number of the ninja nodded their heads, and Hiruzen exclaimed in surprise, "What do you mean that came from Naruto?" He is only 6 years old. As Hiruzen's facial expressions continued to shift, Dog said, "Sir, I think that this was a root base and Naruto was experimented on. Whatever they did, it seems that Naruto is very strong now and slightly unstable. He killed all but the prisoners and even killed Danzo Shimura." First, there was anger at learning that this was a root base that ought to have been shut down. Second, there was sadness at learning that Naruto had been the subject of experiments and who knew what else. And last, there was shock and acceptance at what had happened to his former opponent. "Very well, it seems that my old rival bit off a bit more than he could handle. What did you mean by Naruto being unstable?" replied Hiruzen. "He seems to be bipolar and enjoys killing, however he seems to only kill those that deserve it apparently. He says that he only kills those that have a blackened souls," said Kakashi. Hiruzen said, "Very well, I will see this for myself." Naruto exclaimed, "Indeed Gigi," as he emerged at the tunnel's entrance. The damage he had sustained was now visible due to the light. Scars were all over his body and seemed to stand out even more against his pale skin. The scar that ran from his left eye to the left side of his chin was the worst. It was amazing the boy wasn't blind from such an injury. He was extremely pale and only wore rags, which didn't do much to cover his body. Incredulous, Hiruzen questioned, "Naruto, what did they do to you?" As his eyes grew red and he released his deadly purpose on the ninja troop in front of him, Naruto yelled, "Easy Gigi, they turned me into a monster." The Sandaime said, "Naruto, I need to know what happened down in those tunnels. Please tell me so that I can help you," as he sympathetically gazed at Naruto's smiling face. The Sandaime shivered in terror as Naruto's smile widened and revealed a row of extremely deadly and fierce-looking teeth. Naruto took both of his hands out of his pocket and held them in front of his face, forming a square with them. He simply gazed at the Hokage through the square his hands had formed. The Hokage began to reach for a kunai that was beneath his desk and questioned, "What are you doing, Naruto?" As the Hokage started to perspire a little at how the boy could sense everyone's emotions so easily, Naruto said, "I'm taking a picture to remember forever. You're scared of me Gigi. You reek of fear and regret Gigi. Why is it that you fear me when I am your own grandson in all but blood? Although the regret is a bit confusing, is there anything you wish to tell me Gigi?" As Naruto grinned at the Hokage attempted to regain control of the conversation by asking, "I wasn't aware that we were here to interrogate me, Naruto. Just please tell me what exactly happened down in that cave." As his eyes turned blood red before returning to blue, Naruto exclaimed, "I was enlightened in those caves, Gigi. I found my true purpose, a purpose that will be fulfilled through the blood of those that are damned. All those that have committed such deep dark acts will be subjected to the horror at which only a monster could conjure." "What the devil did they do to him down there, Kami? Will he kill simply those he perceives to be evil, or does he intend to get retribution on everyone who has assaulted him? Why was Danzo unable to listen to me for once?" The Hokage sighed and pondered. The Hokage's words trailed off as Naruto crossed his arms. "I have to know what you mean by that information Naruto. Don't worry Gigi, I won't harm anyone, unless attacked first. If so I shall show them true horror when they face a being that is beyond them in any way. By the way I should warn you I can no longer eat normal foods, now I must eat blood just to live," said Naruto as he licked a fawn. The Hokage stammered, "Blood?" in surprise. The Hokage gave him a weary look as Naruto said, "Blood," with a sickly smiling face. "I need to feast on blood once a week to live, besides there are benefits to consuming the blood from a living victim," Naruto said. As Naruto's smile expanded, the Hokage inquired, "What kind of benefits are we talking about here?" For every victim that I drain, I gain a soul that is stored in, let's say a bank that is located in my mind. Now let's say that I receive an injury that I normally can't heal from. If there is an abundance of blood in the area, then I will heal, but if there is no blood, then I can sacrifice the souls of the victims that I have drained to heal myself. Then there is the added benefit of knowing everything that they knew before I sucked them dry, said Naruto as the Hokage was startled by the knowledge. But then you would KN. Everything there is about Konoha, from the day-to-day operations of the Hokage down to darkest secrets that Danzo knew. Now, this also happens to put my knowledge of the affairs of being a ninja up pretty high, so I will be requesting missions in the future, not now, maybe a week or two, but I expect to be allowed to try them, although not as a ninja. We wouldn't want the other villages knowing about Danzo's weapon, now would we? Said Naruto as the Hokage started to consider what he had asked Naruto. The Hokage said, I can grant you that on a few conditions, Naruto, and Naruto nodded in comprehension. Name them. Naruto replied. The first is that you must refrain from attacking anyone in the village no matter what. Even if you are attacked first, for I don't want the whole village in an uproar at learning that you have become a monster, as you put it, Naruto said with a snort. But no, second, you will only do missions that I approve of and no one is to find out that you are working for Konoha, Naruto replied with a nod. The last is that you tell me everything that you know about Danzo and his exploits before you drained him. If that information turns out to be correct, then you will be interrogating prisoners and spies here in Konoha, completed the Hokage. Naruto said, deal, as he began to leave the room. The Hokage said, where are you going? The night is young, Hokage. I plan to do a little hunting around the village. Surely there is news already spreading about the annihilation of an entire ANBU base here in Konoha. I plan on no letting a single spy get in or out, said Naruto as he penetrated the wall. What on earth has that boy turned into? The Hokage thought. It had been 2 days since Naruto had destroyed Danzo's base and Danzo himself, but he had just been released from the hospital. They had wanted to know exactly what Danzo had done to him, and now they knew. Naruto hopped from tree to tree, simply enjoying the full moon that lighted up the night. He was out patrolling the hamlet mostly to quench his thirst, which had been growing since the previous evening. He didn't want to wait so long just because he could go a week without blood. That October night, he was fortunate to see 2 figures leaping toward the city in the darkness. Despite the lack of light, he could see that they were from the village of Iwa and that one of them was a Chunin-level ninja, the other was Jounin, and the latter had a very black soul under his belt. This made Naruto smile as he thought of ways to kill the ninja. The anxious Chunin bowed his head to avoid making eye contact with the beast of the man in front of him and said, the patrols are too tight, sir. I don't believe that we can make it into the city. Because he was literally the bane of everything in the town, the guy was known as Bane across Iwa. The only reason he survived was because he had a bloodline that allowed him to take on the characteristics of whomever he drank the blood of. In small groups, the holder would commit crimes like rape, murder, and genocide because of their insanity. It was a very old bloodline that only existed in 1 out of every 100 members of his clan, but it drove them insane if they drank the blood of too many victims. Perhaps the least psychotic of all the holders, Bane was the worst in Iwa's opinion because of this. He did everything his fellow holders did, but he did it only for fun and took pride in his work by putting his victims on display for everyone in the town to see. It was not unusual for Bane to smile this way at people, and if one looked at him, they wouldn't believe that someone could be so evil on the inside. This was made possible by his bloodline, and many people thought that he had killed the man to obtain the blood. He had jet black hair that was spiked in various directions, a smooth, angular face, and light blue eyes that seemed to be about to go blind. Bane turned to face Naruto and smiled kindly, saying, "No worries, I have already found my target. He has been following us for some time and I believe it is time we said hello." Bane said, "Come on out already, coward. I want to see your face as I crush the life from your eyes," as his smile changed from one of benevolence to one of malice, promising agony and misery to anybody who came into contact with him. Naruto said, "Interesting. I didn't think that someone like you could track me," as he faded out of a tree to emerge just 20 meters from Bane. Bane chuckled, "A child? This is impossible," as Naruto's smile only became bigger as the man walked away. As a scream rang over the air and Bane turned to face his companion, he saw him missing an arm and trapped to a tree by a clone. Naruto said, "I am no mere child." When dropping the struggling guy, the clone turned to Bane and grinned as he scattered in a cloud of black smoke. "I will deal with him after I am done with you," the clone said. "Interesting, I didn't think Konoha trained children to kill," Bane said, drawing a saw-like sword with a jagged edge. "Oh, they didn't train me to act this way, however their acts did cause a bit of an evolution," said Naruto as he smiled at the individual as his eyes started to glow a fiery red. "You have committed sins of great evil to those that didn't deserve them and have dipped your heart in hole of darkness. That darkness is now your enemy as it will squeeze the very life out of you and enact vengeance for all those you have wronged." As he ran at the youngster with his sword, preparing to rip apart the brat who dared to threaten him, Bane's face instantly filled with wrath. He had actually thought about letting the kid live, with just minor scars, but now he would kill him, slowly, for that insult. He moved swiftly, caught the boy by the neck, and slammed him into a tree while grinning the whole time. The force of the slam caused the tree to splinter like a spider web, and he heard multiple bones in the boy crack under the force. Despite the blood oozing from his mouth, the boy made no sound. If anything, the youngster's smile became even wider, which prompted Bane to strike him in the stomach with the long serrated blade, causing organs to spill out in a heap on the tree branches below. The boy remained silent and his expression remained unchanged. Just that sarcastic smile on his face, with a pair of blood-red eyes that appeared to be piercing Bane's very soul and a row of fanged fangs as white as snow on a chilly winter night. Bane was smiling gleefully at yet another murder he had just committed when he drew out the blade and began hacking away at Naruto's body until it was a pile of torn flesh and bones covering the entire tree. "What the fuck are you, kid?" Bane yelled in disbelief. With a cunning grin, Bane said, "Maybe I should just deal with you now so your screams don't attract the village," as he walked up to his defeated teammate. As he attempted to use his remaining arm to pull himself away from his insane friend, the guy pleaded, "Please, Bane. I beg of you." Bane began smiling sadistically as the chunin in front of him began to scream in agony. "Oh no, can't have that happening now. You see, I have a reputation that needs to be maintained in IWA and I don't see you living as an effective way to maintain it," he said. In one of the most horrible cries Bane had ever heard, the man exclaimed, "Make it stop. Please stop. I must be more terrifying than I thought because I'm not even doing anything and he's screaming like that. What the hell is that?" As Bane saw the chunin's blood seep through his flesh and create a puddle just a few feet away, he thought. Bane exclaimed, "This isn't right," as the child he had just torn to pieces less than a minute earlier suddenly appeared in a column of blood. Naruto said, "I wish you knew how much that hurt, although I guess it doesn't matter as you will be feeling a pain much worse," as his lips opened and blood started to trickle from his fangs. As he uncontrollably stepped back in fear after witnessing a child recover from a pool of blood, Bane exclaimed, "What the hell? You should be dead, this isn't possible." Naruto smirked and laughed at his own taunt, saying, he, I am a lot of things, although I guess the best word to describe what I am would have to be a monster. Now let's finish this little man. Bane glared at the youngster as his thoughts raced with potential explanations for what was happening to him. I'm going to eviscerate you. Bane screamed as he swung his sword in a downward arc at the boy. Pathetic, said Naruto boredly as he caught the blade between his hands and grinned at Bane's terrified expression. That you are no different than all those that you have hurt, a stain on this land that needs to be wiped from existence before others ever have to suffer your cruelty. I will punish you for eternity along with all the others who have committed such crimes, yelled Naruto, breaking the serrated blade the man was holding with a laugh. The man screamed in horror, Katan, grand fire flash, as he threw a huge burst of flames from his palms and leaped back to flee the area of devastation he had just produced. He couldn't possibly make it through something like that. As his eyes widened in horror at what he was witnessing, Bane thought, he will be burned to ashes and dew. Then a shudder went up his spine as a deep laugh filled the air around him. The youngster was inside the blaze, laughing louder than the roar of the flames, even though the inferno he had created was barely 20 meters away and the heat alone had singed the hairs on his body. Despite the fact that the flames were tearing the skin from his bones, the child just laughed in the sickest way imaginable. The boy moved slowly through the flames and came up to Bane, who was too scared to move. As he emerged from the flames, the boy exclaimed in a childlike voice, 1, 2, Naruto's coming for you, without displaying any emotion or indication of the anguish that the inferno had caused. Naruto, in his childlike voice, sang, 3, for blood and guts galore, as he went up to Bane, who had managed to draw a kunai and shakily hold it in defense. Bane said, stay away from me, as he threw the kunai at Naruto. The boy's shoulder was struck by the kunai, but it only made him smile more. 5C, did you find my tricks entertaining? 7, 8, you're the beast now. The man froze and drained his bowls in utter dread at the monster that stood in front of him as Naruto yelled, unleashing all of his remaining murderous intent. As Naruto approached the motionless Bane and leaned down close to his ear, his smile grew. 9, 10, never wake again, he said that as his teeth grew longer and he sank them deeply into the now shrieking Bane's neck, Naruto murmured. When multiple ANBU arrived at the location where Naruto had just slain 2 IWA shinobi, they saw that scenario. The youngster never even noticed their presence as he proceeded to absorb all of the blood from his victim. When a wolf-faced ANBU finally had the guts to approach the youngster, he said, Naruto Uzumaki, what are you doing? As Naruto eventually pulled away from the man's neck and fixed his red glowing eyes on Wolf.as the ANBU stepped back in disbelief, Naruto said in a childlike voice, I was out for a nice midnight stroll when I happened to stumble upon these 2 ninja, I believe they are from IWA, well anyway I was just dying of thirst so I thought that they could help me. Is there a problem though, Wolf? How in the hell did this child kill 2 IWA shinobi without getting any scratches? Wolf thought. Bane unleashed upon him, the second Bane's blood poured down his throat, not realizing that Naruto had recovered from the attacks. Wolf said, Naruto, we're going to have to take you to see Ibiki because we need to know exactly what happened here tonight, and Naruto nodded. Naruto jumped away from the ANBU and the 2 dead and tried to escape into the forest, screaming, I have to see him tomorrow anyway, Wolf. So no. Wolf roared, get him, as his group pursued Naruto. The pursuit would continue all night long as Naruto showed the aspect of himself that would never alter no matter what was done to him. He was still a child at heart, and nothing could ever alter that. Naruto approached behind the Hokage and said, "So you're saying this guy will pay me to drink blood and tell him what they know?" The Hokage said, "That is correct, Naruto," as the latter's smile faded into a little frown. "I will only do it if they defend themselves. I want to hunt them down. It is much more fun to kill a tiger than to kill a penned-up sheep," Naruto declared as the Hokage gave him a sorrowful look after they had passed a number of people for a few seconds. The Hokage muttered, "Killing doesn't have to be fun, Naruto," as Naruto broke into a broad smile. As they got to the final door, the Hokage merely gave him a sorrowful look and said, "Remember Naruto, you are to behave," while Naruto whimpered, "But Gigi. That's one of the few things that actually is fun to me now." Naruto sighed, "Whatever Gigi," and kicked open the door, making the Hokage perspire. Inside, he saw a man chained to the wall, with a bigger man standing over him, his face hard. The man was wearing a black trench coat and a blue bandana, which made Naruto think he looked like a complete badass. As the prisoner gazed curiously at the youngster, the guy said in a deep voice, "So this is the one that you want me to test, Lord Hokage?" After Naruto giggled a little at the Hokage's description of Ibiki's situation, the Hokage said, "In fact, we need to find a way to deal with his tendencies." As he left the room, Ibiki challenged, "I understand, this will be your test then, Naruto. You are to extract all the information that you can from him. I will not give you any information that we have already learned though." The Hokage followed. A clang and thud indicated that the door had been closed and bolted from the outside, preventing anyone from exiting the room. Naruto approached the lone chair in the room, sat down, and gazed at the man chained to the wall. As Naruto's smile widened, the man on the wall laughed, "So this is what they send to get the information from me? Ha! If this is all they got, then they'll never find out where that dumb bitch's body is." The prisoner would yell at and harass Naruto for the entire 20 minutes that they were in the cell, but the blonde would only smile and lick his teeth without even recognizing the man present. As they observed Naruto through a one-way mirror, Ibiki exclaimed, "Lord Hokage, I thought he only had to drink the victim's blood to learn what they knew. He hasn't done anything, but smile at the guy since we started." At last, Naruto forced himself out of the chair and went to the man. "He likes to play with his victims, I guess," the Hokage replied. The man struggled against the shackles, screaming, "What? Finally going to do something, you little brat? I won't spill to you no matter what," at least until Naruto grabbed him by the neck and began crushing his throat. "Who said anything about making you talk?" replied Naruto, flashing his fangs and red eyes. He bit the man's neck right away, forcing him to scream loudly as Naruto swallowed him dry. A minute later, Naruto eventually pulled away from the man's neck and tossed the body aside as he got to his feet grinning. He went to face the mirror and began to tell everyone he knew about the man he had just slain. "It may be brutal, but it does get the job done. He will be invaluable to us if Cloud keeps assaulting our borders in the future," Ibiki said as the Hokage nodded when he finished speaking and Ibiki whistled in agreement. Before grinning slightly, the Hokage sighed, "Hopefully those border attacks stop soon. They have expressed interest in sending an ambassador over to discuss negotiations. Hopefully a war can be avoided," the Hokage said. When Naruto inquired, "Why should war be avoided?" the two men became alarmed and turned to face the mirror, where they saw that Naruto's head had phased through it and was now speaking to them. "Naruto, people die in war, that enough is a reason not to wage war," the Hokage said, while Naruto cheerfully shrugged. Naruto replied, "You humans confuse me," and started to leave them. He passed through the distant wall before phasing through it and vanishing from view. Ibiki said, "That kid even makes me shiver in terror," as the Hokage nodded. The Hokage gazed at Naruto's smiling face and said, "So let me get this straight. You went on a walk through the woods and came across a bandit camp to the north of Konoha?" Naruto said, "Yep." As the Hokage went on, Sarutobi stopped as he gazed at Naruto's beaming face and said, "Then you decided to walk up to the camp and demanded for them to give you all of their gold. After they refused, you decided to quote, make an imple of them dickless swine, and then you proceeded to kill 26. 27, suddenly cut Naruto off. 27 of the bandits in the camp and impale them on large stakes around the camp to be displayed to all who came upon the camp. It also mentions that many of them were ghouls and were still moving despite being impaled on the spikes. Does that about sum it up?" replied the Hokage. The Hokage interrupted Naruto as he began, "I would say that is an accurate account of my work for last night. I could go more detailed if you like. I still remember the way this really large guy squealed as I pulled out high." As Naruto laughed a little, the Hokage said regretfully, "That's okay, Naruto. I've heard my fair share of stories for my life. You like this, don't you? I would be lying if I said I didn't, so when are you going to allow me to start actually doing normal missions for the village? I have been dying to get my name out there so I can have stronger opponents to fight," stated Naruto as the Hokage stared at him intently. As Naruto skulked a little, the Hokage said, "We have already discussed this, Naruto. You are not a weapon for this village, you will be going to the academy and you will deal with it." "Why though? They are nothing but a couple of kids that will have no idea what being a shinobi really is. It will do me no good to be put into a class that I will have no reason attending," argued Naruto after he sat there silently for a few seconds. The Hokage sat there contemplating long. Naruto stared at the Hokage, who said, "I don't care, you may not have had a normal childhood, but you will go to school. This world doesn't need another mindless berserker in it." As he leaped from his seat and leaped out of the closed window, breaking it in the process, Naruto said, "You may regret that decision, no I won't, and fuck you." As he summoned some chunin to start cleaning up, the Hokage grumbled, "He could have just phased through the barrier." The Hokage then dug under his desk and took out a small orange book that he needed to pass the time. However, as soon as he opened it, Naruto's head phased through it, leaving the Hokage severely injured. As the Hokage took a few moments to collect himself, Naruto said, "By the way, Gigi, what is up with all the ceremony preparations? Is there going to be a festival?" "No, Kyumo has asked for a peace meeting dealing with the recent border incursions that have been happening at our borders. It's a good thing too since we cannot afford to go to war with them at the moment," the Hokage said after taking a big breath. Naruto scowled. As the Hokage scowled at him, Naruto said, "You can't, but I can," with a sing-song expression. When the Hokage yelled, "I forbid you from doing anything that will put our village at risk, Naruto." Naruto stared back. As he faded away once more, Naruto responded, "I won't do anything, unless they deserve it. I will not let the wicked corrupt the pure." The Hokage turned back to his orange book and mumbled, "I sure hope nothing goes wrong." An hour ago, Kyumo and Konoha signed a peace treaty between their villages, but nobody understood what Kyumo was actually plotting except for one person. "Those fools, they have no idea what Kyumo is planning," Naruto said, gazing at the illuminated village. As you can see, Naruto was present as soon as the emissaries passed through the gates, and it was then that he noticed who had entered the town. The man must have been among the most sinister individuals he had ever met. When their eyes first met, Naruto had a brief sequence of flashes that showed him the crimes this man had perpetrated, many of them even caused him to grimace in astonishment. At that moment, he decided to murder this man, whether he did so inside the village or outside, it didn't matter. Treaty be damned, this man would die by his own hands no matter what. Naruto could see that the man had sexually assaulted several women. Each one of them was tortured at the time, and after a few days, they would all be killed, slowly. Those ladies had no way out. But that wasn't the worst of what Naruto witnessed. This man didn't care about age. In fact, the younger he was, the more content he was after destroying his will. There, Naruto swore to himself that this man would not only perish but also be imprisoned inside Naruto for all eternity, subjected to the hell he had created with no escape whatsoever. However, for the time being, Naruto waited while keeping a close eye on his victim. Had he not been given his talent, Naruto would never have even known what this man was. Naruto could see the glitter in his eyes fairly well. They were the eyes of a raging monster, that could be released at any minute on anyone unlucky enough to catch him at a poor time. He played the role flawlessly and spoke to several of the individuals in the throng with ease. He was actually already working on one of his prospective victims. Naruto had observed that the Hyuga were in charge of the procession on behalf of Konoha, and he had watched his gaze continuously shift to a girl his own age who was trailing the family head during the parade. It was clear that the Kumo ninja was going to try something, and whether the Hyuga knew or not didn't really matter to him because, in his view, if the ninja tried something, he could kill him and get away with it. Naruto said, "Now all I have to do is wait for him to make a move. I hate waiting," while he kept watching the nauseating procession. It was finally time for the ninja to attack the Hyuga and implement Naruto's own plan, which was amazing and even followed the terms of the treaty. The moment he left the village's borders, Konoha would no longer be liable for his protection. The Kumo ninja quickly slipped past the Hyuga and arrived at the young heiress's door while Naruto observed from a distance. How the hell did he sneak past the Hyugas? "They can see through walls and have 360-degree vision," exclaimed Naruto, who found it difficult to elude them himself. A minute later, Naruto noticed the man leaving the room and heading toward the compound's walls. At that moment, he realized something was amiss with the Hyuga patrols because there weren't any on this side of the wall, despite the fact that there were always guards present. For the past 3 months, Naruto has made it his mission to watch and recall every patrol route that the ninja and clans followed across the city. He remembered this one in particular since it faced his house, and he wanted to make sure the Hyuga weren't watching him. But they weren't present on this particular night, a night when the Hyuga valued security above all else. "Someone is working within the inside," Naruto said after rapidly figuring it out. As the man moved through the city with ease, dodging the patrols, Naruto thought, "No problem though. After I'm done with him I will know who betrayed the village and the Hyuga." So it's not limited to the Hyuga. When Naruto eventually spotted the man leaving the village with the 7-year-old girl strapped on his back, he grinned with delight and said, "There are moles in the village too." "Finally, it's my turn now," Naruto said. "Fools. Soon my village will have the Byakugan and Kumo will be a step closer to reclaiming dominance over the village. That fool of a Raikage wants peace with the Leaf. They are the reason we are so weak in the first place," screamed the guy while jumping from tree to stump. The girl who was strapped on his shoulders cried, "Please let me go." He had removed the gag from her mouth so that she might plead for her release. God, he loved it when they pleaded for forgiveness before he broke their spirit and then their body. As Hinata began to cry, the man shot back, "Haha, you aren't going anywhere, girl. You will be used to breed a new generation of warriors for Kyumo. No nation will stand in our way, and it all starts tonight. She screamed as loudly as she could, "Please someone help me," in the hopes that her father or someone else would arrive. "Your cries are just making this better and better for me. Oh, I'm going to have so much fun tonight," he exclaimed as he arrived onto a big clearing that separated the woodland of dead trees from Konoha's woodland. The man simply laughed as she shouted out into the darkness. But he came to a complete stop at the edge of the clearing when he noticed a tiny, moonlit figure that was barely larger than a kid and was slowly approaching him. Believing that the youngster was only a genjutsu cast by a Konoha ninja, the Kyumo ninja stiffened in anticipation. He attempted to release it, but nothing occurred, refuting that assumption. The kid approached the Kyumo ninja with curiosity and said, "Hey mister. What are you doing out here?" The ninja was unable to see any of the boy's features since the night was so black over his face, but he could tell that the boy was no older than the girl he was holding. The boy said inquisitively, "You going to answer, mister? What's that you have on your back?" At that point, the girl began to wail and mumble helpful things. She whimpered, "Please help me," as the boy seemed abruptly aware. The boy screamed, "Is that a girl? What are you doing? Are you kidnapping?" He argh har, as blue electricity suddenly covered his body and started to burn the skin of his bones. The boy didn't die, but he continued to scream until he finally fell to the ground, twitching as his body smelled like horribly burned flesh. Although Hinata was unable to witness the attack, she could hear the kid cry in agony, hear his flesh sizzle, and smell the terrible stench of his burning flesh, which made her throw up. The man said, "That's what happens when you try to escape, princess. I wish I could have made it worse for the boy, but you know, I'm pressed for time if I want to have a little fun later tonight," as he passed the boy's charred body. The girl on his shoulder gave a startled cry just as the ninja was ready to jump across the clearing, and then he heard a voice that he was certain he would never hear again. The youngster he had allegedly just killed a second earlier said, "Hey mister. What did you do that for?" The ninja turned and whipped a kunai in the direction the boy's voice was coming from, and to his amazement, the kunai sank deeply into the boy's now repaired body. As he watched the youngster struggle to stop the blood flow, the Kyumo ninja said, "How the hell did he get back up from that?" The boy took a few steps back and fell to the ground, causing blood to spill from the kunai protruding from his ribs. The ninja suddenly had a clear view of the child. The Kyumo ninja stopped in his tracks when he saw that the lad he had just killed, again, was a Jinchuriki for the Kyubi, and that his spiky blonde hair was now stained with blood and whisker marks on his cheeks. The gold and silver brothers both had the same marks. As Hinata began to scream once more, the guy said, "So the yondaime didn't kill the Kyubi after all, he sealed it into a boy, pity, we could have used its power in the upcoming war." The boy grasped the kunai in his chest and tore it out, screaming, "Stop hurting me, mister." The wound miraculously healed and the blood appeared to vanish. "I only wanted to talk, but if you want to play a game, we can," the boy said, a smile creeping into his face. The man stepped back in fear and asked, "What the hell are you, kid?" Naruto's smile simply went wild as he fell into the ground in front of the ninja's eyes. The child's voice reverberated throughout the clearing, making it impossible for the Kyumo ninja to locate the child. And out of the darkness the monster did call. "True pain and suffering he brought to them all," the child said. Away ran the children to hide in their beds, for fear that the devil would chop off their heads. "What's going on?" The ninja cried as he continued to circle around in search of the child. That's easy, you will experience pain of the likes which you can't even imagine. All those that you have played your sick games on will smile as they watch you suffer for an eternity in a hell fit for only you, said the kid as the Kumo ninja started to shiver. When he felt the child's bloodlust in the clearing, he almost gave up and committed suicide, but he was too strong to do so. To break his trance, he wounded his hand with a kunai, but this just made the child's bloodlust double. The girl on his shoulders was strangely silent for the situation and unaffected by the unseen pressure, which caused him to collapse to one knee as he gasped for air. The man asked, "What the hell is this?" as he felt another wave of murderous intent. Sweat trickled down his face and his hands trembled from the fear he was experiencing. He gazed at the ground while he heard soft footsteps approaching. Then he forced his head up and looked at the boy who was now just a foot away. As his eyes lit crimson red and his whisker marks started to glow red, the child said, "Do you feel it? The terror that your victims have experienced, the terror of knowing your life was at an end, you are at my mercy, however, I am not so merciful to things like you." With the girl on his shoulder, the ninja took a chance and leaped away as fast as he could after feeling the strain on his body suddenly release. "I have to get away," he exclaimed. "I must go away." In a desperate thought, a voice whispered in his ear, "Where do you think you're going?" The ninja instantly stopped, seized Hinata, and put a kunai to the sobbing girl's neck. With an unfathomable sense of fear, the ninja frantically screamed, "Stay back or I'll kill the girl." The voice said, "You think that will stop me?" As the guy felt his arms suddenly be pulled from his body. He looked down to see that the arm holding the girl was gone, torn off at the shoulder, and the child was now free. The dad frantically searched around for the youngster and exclaimed, "What the hell are you?" As Naruto emerged on a tree just 10 meters from the Kumo ninja, the voice said, "Isn't it clear by now? I am the one that is going to kill you, the monster that shall consume your soul and make you suffer for eternity." The man screamed, "Fuck you!" Retone, thunder god's wrath, and hurled a huge bolt of lightning at the smiling child. The bolt struck the child with a powerful burst of energy. The ninja laughed, "Ha ha ha, there's no way you could have survived that," but as the smoke cleared, the man exclaimed, "What the hell," as he saw the boy's burned and demolished body slowly starting to come together. A group of large black dogs started to emerge from the corpse. They were formless and outlined in crimson light, and the Kumo ninja literally shit himself when he saw how hungry the dogs were staring at him. The dogs' yellow teeth and glowing red eyes seemed to shine in the darkness. The ninja stepped back in terror as the dogs watched him every move with ravenous eyes, and he cried out, "This is impossible." "Impossible, you say?" "No, this is justice for the sins you have committed, this is retribution for all those you have hurt. You made yourself feel powerful when you hurt those people, but now that you are in a similar situation you panic like worm you are," said Naruto as the dogs surrounded him. "I'm going to kill you." The man screamed as he charged, drawing a kunai with his final arm. "Fuck you. I'm an elite jounin and I won't go down like this," Naruto exclaimed, so pathetic. As he raised his arm and spread his palm. "Devour him, my hounds," he said, as the ghostly dogs lunged towards the ninja. The sound of flesh and bone being ripped apart and eaten was drowned out by the man's inhuman cries of agony as the hounds ate every last bit of his body and soul. Naruto murmured, "Not even a snack," as he combed through his victim's memories. Akatsuki, second time that name has come up in a victim's memories. "I may have to deal with them in the future," he said, heading into the night to find the girl he had just saved earlier. With her Byakugan activated, Hinata Hyuga frantically scanned the dark, bewildered and frightened by what had happened just seconds before that evening. She had barely been safe under her bed's covers for 30 minutes when that man entered her chamber. Before she realized anything was amiss, he had already bound her and hauled her out of her room and into Konoha's walls. But after she got beyond the walls, she really thought she would die because the man had been taunting her while they were jumping from tree to tree. When they encountered the young boy she recalled from the park a year prior, everything changed. He had saved her back then, but this time she saw him being burned alive by the madman who had kidnapped her. Though he returned and attempted to confront her kidnapper once more, she witnessed his alleged death as a kunai was inserted deeply into his ribs. It was then that she discovered why she had been warned to avoid him. He was the container of the Kyubi, a beast that had wiped out the leaf in a single night before being sealed away into the blonde boy. She was surprised that it didn't kill him. Instead, he merely grumbled a little as he effortlessly removed the kunai and vanished from view. All she knew was that she was being pushed through the air and losing her sense of reality. She woke up in the little clearing where she was sitting, desperately searching for someone to come fetch her. She spotted a figure approaching her out of the shadows, so she leaped away and gazed at the smiling blonde guy. She was relieved to see him okay, but a few things worried her. Currently, the blonde was covered in a layer of fresh blood that she surmised wasn't his. Secondly, his smile wasn't your typical smile, it was a ruthless one, and each of his teeth was sharp and pointed, shining brightly in the darkness. Lastly, his face was adorned with glowing crimson eyes and whisker marks. It seemed as though her response to him had really made the blonde smile even more, as though he relished watching others wince at him. It felt like an eternity before any of them tried to speak. As his smile widened and Hinata's breath began to quicken, Naruto said smoothly, "Hinata Hyuga, it's good to see you again. I'm not sure if you know my name yet, but let me introduce myself anyway. My name is Naruto Uzumaki, your new friend." In an old ceremony, a group of individuals gathered around a giant luminous stone etched in purple runes miles distant. They all exuded a sense of bloodlust as they sang words from a language that had been lost. The group's leader abruptly rose above the others and took off his hood to reveal a pale scarred face and dark violet eyes. He took a deep breath as his fellows abruptly ceased their chant. As his supporters started chanting in the old language once more, he exclaimed, "My friends, the blood moon has finally come, it is time to unleash our horror upon the world once more. May Jashin be praised." Each cultist was branded with the symbol to demonstrate their commitment to the cause they all supported. Suddenly, a huge rune appeared beneath them all. It was a symbol of hate that had not been seen by the likes of the civilized world in centuries because it brought destruction and hate wherever it went. Once again, millennium was born on this night. The teacher looked lovingly at the class in front of him and said, "Okay class, I would like to congratulate you all on making it this far. I hope that many of you can stick it out for the rest of the year and become shinobi for the village." They were the descendants of multiple clans and a sizable portion of civilian kids who were fairly strong given their upbringing, so Irika Yumino, who had been teaching this class for years, understood that it had the potential to be one of the strongest generations of ninja ever. Irika always wondered why the Hokage would listen to only one man, but it wasn't his place to question the Hokage. They had to be strong because of the new curriculum that the Hokage implemented a few years ago. Something about him needing people to keep up with him. Irika went on as if nothing had happened, despite the loud moans of the female students. "Now there will be a few changes this year. mostly in the area of physical training and practical exercises and techniques. Also, we will be getting 2 new students this year. I don't know why they weren't with us before, and the Hokage told me not to ask," she said. The entire class erupted in irate objections or excited murmuring as soon as he finished speaking, since the 2 children didn't even need to endure the torment they had endured for the previous 5 years of their existence. Irika shouted, "Silence," and immediately stopped the class. "From what I understand, they have received some instruction from teachers and ought to be at your level. They should be here any moment now," she said. Following Irika's revelation, there was silence as many students started to speculate about the identities of the 2 pupils. The Hokage was clearly aware of them because he had spoken with Irika directly about the matter. At that point, the class heard a soft knock on the door. Irika got up from his desk, went to the door, and opened it to reveal a young girl with long lavender hair and a charming grin. The girl gave off no negative vibes at all, so Irika couldn't help but smile at her. But when he looked at who or what was behind the girl, that smile vanished. He assumed the boy was dressed in a big, ripped black robe that fully obscured his face in the darkness of the hood. The only thing he could see was a big, toothy smile that appeared to put Irika on guard, and 2 sparkling blue eyes that were staring at him through the shadow. But most striking of all was the boy's intentness. Then there was a field of gravity surrounding him that made it a little hard to breathe. Only pure power could create such an effect. There was an undercurrent of bloodlust that seemed to be barely controlled and could be unleashed at any time, and God bless those who experienced it. "So you must be Hinata Hyuga and Naruto Uzumaki. I wasn't expecting you so soon. The Hokage said that you had business to attend to before you could be here," said Irika. As Naruto's smile somewhat expanded, Hinata spoke in a kind tone. "We would have been late, but Naruto was impatient and wanted to see what school would be like," Naruto said. "They were no fun, so I killed them quickly," while Irika stared at him, attempting to determine whether or not it was true. Irika nodded, but the 2 saw a trickle of perspiration fall down his brow. "Pardon his attitude. He hasn't been in a good mood lately and last night's meal was barely adequate," Hinata said. "I wonder what the Hokage is thinking. Assigning him to a group of children is going to have disastrous consequences." Despite Irika's anxious glance at Naruto, Hinata smiled lovingly at Naruto and said, "Don't worry, sensei, he won't hurt anyone, unless I tell him to, of course." Irika walked to the center of the room and said, "Okay, well then come on in and let me introduce you 2 to the class. Just tell them your names, likes, and dislikes." "Okay class, these are 2 new students I was telling you about." Naruto and the Hinata followed him. The entire room fell silent as they entered and stared at the 2 new students. Most of the boys were staring at Hinata with unspoken lust because of how her pale skin gleamed in the room's light. Those who weren't focused on the spell, which was Hinata, were focusing on Naruto because they could sense a lot of power emanating from the cloaked figure. Due to their jealousy of the blue-haired beauty in front of them, the girls were glaring at either Hinata or the majority of the male population. She exuded such a warm aura that even some of the other girls couldn't help but feel a slight attraction to her. The main reason the majority of the girls were glaring was because one Uchiha appeared to be eyeing the girl himself. Shino Aburame, Shikamaru Nara, and Kiba Inuzuka were the only people in the room who weren't focusing on Hinata. Kiba could smell Naruto's blood and his dog Akamaru was whimpering in terror at the cloaked figure. Shikamaru could feel the power slipping off him and merely muttered something annoying as he went back to sleep. Shino was able to sense that the person wearing the cloak was extremely strong and that his chakra was very dark and powerful. Irika stated, "Please introduce yourselves to the class. then you can take a seat at the top row, as he sat down next to his aide Mizuki. His voice was cautious as he inquired, "Irika, is that who I think it is?" Irika sighed and explained, "I think it's Mizuki, but if the Hokage thinks it's okay then we have no room to argue." "Hello, my name is Hinata Hyuga, and I am currently the heir to the Hyuga clan. My likes include training, flower pressing, and my only friend Naruto here. My dislikes include rapists, perverts, and those that have hurt my friend Naruto," she said, smiling sweetly as she stepped forward and addressed the class, oblivious to their behavior. When the class turned to face Naruto, he simply stood there grinning through the shadows of his hood. "Naruto," whispered Hinata as he turned to face her and eventually moved forward. In a childish voice that was completely out of character for his attire, he exclaimed, "Hello. My names are Naruto Uzumaki. My likes include blood, guts, screams, my teachers, and my master." Hinata frowned a little at that last line. "My dislikes include most of you, rapists, those of utter darkness." Naruto concluded his introduction with a childish laugh that quickly escalated into full-blown maniacal laughter that sent shivers down the spines of most of the children. Hinata led the two as they moved to the back of the class. "Okay, you two can take your seats up at the back now," Irika said. As soon as they sat down, Hinata said, "Naruto, what did I tell you about calling me your master?" Naruto remarked, "I will always call you master, until the day I believe it is no longer needed for me to do so," as Hinata recalled the day her entire life changed. Rewind. Hinata stammered, "Min friend? What do you mean?" As Naruto walked around her like a tiger surrounding its prey. Naruto sniffed at the air and grinned slightly. "That's exactly what I meant it to mean. There are very few people in this world that I can trust, I can tell by just looking into your eyes. Now that I can trust you, I've never encountered anything like this before," he said. Hinata's face went whiter as Naruto's teeth gleamed in the moonlight. "Besides, your scent is intoxicating, I'm half tempted now to just drain you and be done with it," she said. She managed to gasp out, what?" when Naruto once again met her eyes. "You don't recognize me, do you?" As Hinata shook her head, Naruto inquired, she said, "You saved a year ago from a bunch of bullies during my first week in the academy," and Naruto gave her a contemplative look before grinning once more. "Ah. That explains how you know who I am. I suppose it would be more accurate to ask whether you knew who I really am." Hinata was perplexed as Naruto repeated the question. What are you?" she hesitantly inquired as Naruto grinned at her. "Girl, I am a monster in every meaning of the word. I have killed a lot of people and will kill a lot more in the future. Why aren't you afraid of me right now?" he inquired as Hinata gave him a curious look. As Naruto's smile softened, she responded, "Why would I be afraid of you? You helped me from that animal. If you wanted to hurt me, you would have done it by now." Just before the Hokage and a group of Hyuga arrived, Naruto said, "That is a very good answer, my dear. Perhaps you are the one I have been waiting for. However, we might have to call this meeting to an end as I sense a group of powerful ninja on their way." For some reason, Naruto preferred to think of her as his master. He said that it had something to do with his nature, but she didn't really believe him. As a result, the two had met in the most improbable of circumstances and managed to become the best of friends, as Hinata termed it. Being around Naruto for days on end without any respite changed Hinata's attitude significantly as well. She was no longer shy, weak, or timid and prone to stuttering. Instead, she was a confident, skilled warrior who could entice any man her age in and set her trap. After the incident, Naruto was hired as her main bodyguard at all times because he didn't really need to sleep due to his condition. This also had the effect of giving him equal status as a chunin, but it was kept a secret from the rest of the village out of fear for their safety. As you can see, Hinata's greatest strength was her ability to use a variety of genjutsu. Her Byakugan, as it turned out, was unique because it allowed her to use her cast area effect genjutsu even more effectively than any Sharingan could. However, she also used it with Naruto's help to make the Juken much more lethal. She and only she could use it. It worked similarly to the Juken, but instead of shutting down the chakra points, it would literally turn everything the chakra touches into jelly, except skin. Not even bone could stand a chance. This was only used when she was fighting Naruto or when she had to follow him to eliminate a bandit camp to ensure he behaved because Naruto would only fully listen to her. It was embarrassing for them both to be sitting in the center of a classroom full of kids who had no idea what the real world was like, but the Hokage had insisted that they must do this in order to advance to Jounin. As Mizuki and he left the room, Irika said, "Well, class, I'm sorry, but Mizuki-sensei and I have to get to the Hokage's tower for a few minutes to discuss something about the new schedule." The class immediately erupted in yells and conversations about the two new students seated in the back of the room. A few of the more talkative students went up to the two and attempted to strike up a conversation, but only Hinata would speak because Naruto tended to frighten them away with a spooky grin. However, Hinata and Naruto were soon approached by a few children who were a little bigger than the rest of the class. I know it's cliché, but it provides me an excuse to introduce Naruto's weapons. Hey! What, then, makes you two so unique that you were exempt from attending our class up until this point? As he scowled at Hinata and Naruto, the group's commander asked. Naruto sarcastically remarked, "Don't know. Maybe we just don't suck like the rest of you," as the faces of the three boys turned scarlet, as did the majority of the class. "It takes a lot of courage to disrespect us. Kicking your ass for saying something like that wouldn't be too difficult." In a calm, deep voice, the biggest boy stated. Naruto swiftly said, "And it wouldn't be hard to fuck your mom. Doesn't mean I would advise it though," as Hinata giggled at the boy's intense look. "Oh Naruto, don't you have to annoy them all the time?" she questioned naively as one of the boys reached out to stop her, but he was stopped in his tracks when he felt something pressing against the base of his chin. It was a unique weapon that no one in the room had ever seen before, but based on the grin on Naruto's face, it was extremely dangerous. Naruto had moved faster than anyone else in the room could see, and he had taken something out of his cloak and placed it under the boy's chin. "Are you familiar with this?" "This is probably one of the few things in life that I genuinely enjoy," Naruto said, as though he were posing a question to his parents. "I call it judgment because it judges one's soul with a .50 caliber slug that is fired faster than sound. One hit from it will completely destroy your life. Now, if I ever see any of you bothering my master again, I will personally make sure that I am the one to pass judgment on to you." As Hinata sighed, a sinister voice threatened Naruto. "Rewind. Naruto, do you ever use a weapon?" Hinata said, seeing at Naruto's bleeding teeth and claws. Naruto merely grinned at her before glancing at the 10 bandits gathered around him. As the bandits snarled at the two children who had wiped out the majority of the camp, Naruto mumbled, "Don't worry, master. I just don't like using my favorite weapon against trash like them." "But are those firearms in your possession?" As Naruto's smile widened and he abruptly produced a big, odd weapon and aimed it at one of the bandits, Hinata inquired. Hey kid, what will that do? It's not sharp at all. The bandit chuckled as Naruto's smile transformed into a savage one. We'll see what it can accomplish. Bang! Screamed Naruto so loudly that the majority of the bandits had to hide their ears. The bandits started to chuckle, but Naruto's smile remained unwavering. When the .50 caliber round tore through the bandit's body, he was reduced to a pile of meat. Your weapon did, bang, and then everything went topsy-turvy as Naruto slowly started to kill all the remaining bandits as they tried to flee. As Naruto expelled smoke from his smoking barrel, the 10 bodies, if you can call them that, were lying about him and Hinata in a matter of seconds. Messy, said Naruto, wiping some blood from his cloak. Hinata replied, there's nothing more untidy than utilizing those claws of yours. What do you name that thing? I named it Judgment, for I will only use it on those that I have judged to be evil and beyond salvation. All those that relish in the suffering in the world shall face down Judgment's barrel and beg forgiveness, declared Naruto. Hinata sighed mockingly, so poetic. As Naruto swiftly sank his teeth into the meaty mess that had once been a bandit and started to tear into it, eating bits at a moment, he said, I thought so too, saying to no one in particular, I hope it's not too weird to say that when you eat them it makes me hungry. Hinata. When Naruto pushed the trigger a little and the boys started to wail a little, the entire school fell silent. My, did someone have a small accident? As the class noticed a damp patch developing in the boy's pants, Naruto inquired, That's enough Naruto, stop playing around, I can handle myself, Hinata reprimanded him as she placed her hand on his arm. Naruto cocked his eye at her before slowly removing his gun and growling at the child, which caused him and his companions to flee. At that moment, Iruka decided to go inside the room just in time to have to dodge a boy who was crying. What just happened? As the entire class gazed at Naruto in terror, Iruka questioned, after 9 months. Iruka still didn't understand why the Hokage had insisted on having Naruto and Hinata join their class at the start of the year, even though the two were already powerful and, to be honest, scared the living daylights out of her. For the majority of the students in Iruka's class that year, the year was like hell on earth. At least Naruto did. He did discover, though, that the two tended to keep to themselves while they were at school. Things only got out of hand when someone thought it would be a good idea to urinate on one of them, at which point they would either flee the classroom in tears, having urinated their pants, or too scared to move. Perhaps that was the first time Naruto showed off his revolver, called Judgment. He quickly drew it out and blew up the dummies in a split second, surprising both Iruka and Mizuki because neither man could see the bullets. The first significant event in the class occurred at that time. You see, one Uchiha named Sasuke decided that Naruto's weapon was his, which didn't work out well because Naruto almost killed the child. Fortunately, Hinata stopped Naruto just before the trigger was pulled, saving Sasuke's life. Since then, Sasuke and almost the entire class have detested Naruto. The only people he allowed to sit next to him were Shino Aburame. Shino never bothered Naruto, so there were no issues. Shikamaru Nara, who was also one of the few because he could actually have a conversation with the bloodthirsty boy without becoming alarmed, and Choji Akimichi, who was even allowed to be close to the blonde, possibly because he never felt threatened by Choji. Iruka thought, maybe he wasn't that bad, just a boy trying to cope with the cards he was dealt, as he examined the genin teams that were to be assembled that day. It was strange in a way because he could tell that Naruto enjoyed the thought of killing people and draining them, he said, but he still only directed his bloodlust to those he felt deserved it. So Team 7 will have Kakashi Hatake as their Jounin sensei, and that team is made up of Shino Aburame, Hinata Hyuga, and Naruto Uzumaki, Irika said, quickly listing the teams before arriving at the final few that he thought would actually accomplish anything in the future. He was pleasantly surprised to see that all three appeared to be quite pleased with the team. At that point, the class went crazy as all the fangirls began yelling about not being on Sasuke's team, especially Ino Yamanaka, who was being made fun of by Sakura Haruno. Team 8 will have Kurenai, forget last name LOL, as their sensei. That team will consist of Sasuke Uchiha, Kiba Inuzuka, and Sakura Haruno. Irika attempted to keep the class under control, but the fangirls wouldn't stop talking. He had never witnessed it this awful before, and even his large head jutsu couldn't stop them. Then, bang! The girls were essentially silenced as Naruto's rifle went off, creating a rather large hole in the ceiling. "Please continue, sensei," he responded smilingly as he revealed a lot of information about Naruto's intentions to kill, which stopped many of the girls from yelling in wrath. He concluded by saying, "All right, so Team 9 is still in use, so Team 10 will have Asuma Sarutobi as their sensei, and that team will consist of Shikamaru Nara, Choji Akimichi, and Ino Yamanaka." Suddenly, Irika was met by a sight he had assumed he would never see in his life. As you can see, Kakashi Hatake arrived on time, not reading his well-known works. "Hello Irika, pleasant day huh?" he asked pleasantly. "Yeah, Kakashi-senpai," Irika replied, grinning as he regained emotional control. As he enthusiastically said to the class, "Okay, Team 9, let's head out to the training ground 9, follow me." Naruto, Hinata, and Shino all accompanied Kakashi out of the room and into their new lives together. Wave Country is miles away. A big teenager in a suit yelled, "Day man ahahaha, fighter of the night man ahahaha," and threw a lot of kunai at a big group of people, watching with satisfaction as they tore through the crowd. "Champion of the sun ahahaha. You're a master of karate and friendship for everyone." He kept singing as he saw the last of the kunai twist and turn in the air before hitting the final man several times, tearing him to pieces. A thug, disgusted by the man's easy murder of the bunch of peasants, exclaimed, "What the hell is that guy singing?" As the man walked past them, the other thug remarked, "I don't know man, that dude is seriously messed up. He must be from across the sea or something, he doesn't even speak English most of the time." In a heavily foreign voice, he hummed the song he had been singing at a leisurely pace, asking them in German, "Das ist gut." Ja. The thugs looked perplexed at his words, but he chose to ignore them. "We must get back to headquarters, Gato won't want us being too late now would he?" he asked.